parents sent a group text 3 days before Christmas. We think it's best for Robin not to show up. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. 3 days before Christmas, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a group text from my parents sent to my siblings and me. At first, I thought it would be about dinner plans, maybe last-minute arrangements for the holiday. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. The message was short, almost cold. We think it's best for Robin not to show up this year. Robin. Me. Their own child. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My heart pounded, my eyes blurred, and a sharp pain spread across my chest. How do you even respond when your own parents ask you not to come home for Christmas? A holiday that's supposed to be about family, love, and belonging. My name is Robin. I'm in my late 20s, the middle child of Daniel and Margaret. My older brother, Ethan, has always been the golden boy. Captain of the football team in high school, celebrated for every small achievement, adored by my parents like he could do no wrong. My younger sister, Kelly, was the baby of the family. Sweet, funny, and endlessly protected. No matter what she did, there was always an excuse made for her. Then there was me, the scapegoat, the one who always seemed to carry the blame whenever something went wrong. If Ethan got into trouble, somehow it was my influence. If Kelly snapped or acted out, it was because I didn't set a better example. Even as kids, the favoritism was clear. At birthdays, Ethan's parties were extravagant while mine were simple, almost forgettable. When I got into college, there were no congratulations, just comments about how expensive it would be. When Ethan barely graduated, my parents threw him a celebration dinner. It didn't stop in adulthood. Every holiday was another reminder. My ideas were brushed aside, my efforts overlooked. I could cook, decorate, bring thoughtful gifts, but it never seemed to matter. I was invisible unless they needed someone to criticize. So, sitting there with that text in my hand, it wasn't just about Christmas. It was about years of being pushed out, of never being enough. Still, I couldn't help but feel that sharp sting of rejection. No matter how prepared you think you are, nothing can soften the blow of your parents telling you not to come home. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in silence, memories flashing through my mind of all the times I had tried to belong. Deep down, though, something in me started to shift. Maybe this was the moment I finally stopped chasing their acceptance. This year, I had actually been looking forward to Christmas. For weeks, I saved money so I could buy gifts that really mattered, ones I knew each person would appreciate. I spent nights wrapping them carefully, adding ribbons and tags with their names written in neat letters. I even baked batches of cookies, the kind my family always liked. I imagined setting them out on the kitchen counter, just like old times, with everyone grabbing a handful while laughing in the living room. It wasn't that I believed everything would be perfect, but I hoped maybe this year could be different. I told myself that small efforts might finally be noticed, that showing up with kindness might change the mood. I carried that hope with me right up until the day my parents sent the text. The message came out of nowhere. It was so sudden, so blunt, that I had to read it twice. They had sent it to all three of us, but it was meant for me alone. In a few short words, they made it clear I wasn't welcome. The gifts I bought, the cookies I baked, the energy I put into preparing, all of it seemed pointless the moment my eyes landed on that sentence. My siblings' responses made everything worse. Ethan replied first with something short and uncomfortable, like he didn't know what else to say. Kelly followed soon after with her own awkward reply. Neither of them stood up for me. Neither asked why I was being singled out. It was as if my absence had already been decided and accepted. Reading their words, I felt a weight pressing down on me. It wasn't just disappointment, it was something heavier, something sharp. That small bit of hope I had built up collapsed. It was clear my place in the family had never been secure. Their silence and hesitation reminded me of all the times they had stayed quiet before, all the moments when I had been brushed aside. What hurt the most wasn't only the rejection itself, but the way everyone treated it like it wasn't shocking at all. No one asked me how I felt. No one questioned the decision. The message landed, and life just went on for them. For me, though, it was like the ground opened up beneath my feet. I sat with the phone in my hand, staring at the conversation thread. My name was there, but it felt like I wasn't even part of it. I thought about the pile of wrapped gifts sitting in the corner of my apartment. I thought about the smell of cookies cooling on the counter. All of it was supposed to bring us together, and now it was just a reminder of how far apart we really were. It was in that moment I realized this wasn't about one holiday. It was the result of years of being left on the outside, years of small cuts that had finally added up. This text was just the latest and maybe the clearest sign of where I stood. Looking back, the way things turned out around Christmas wasn't surprising. The truth is, it had been building since we were kids. Ethan was always the favorite. From the time he could walk, my parents talked about him like he was destined for something great. When he joined the football team in middle school, they treated it like the biggest achievement. And every Friday night, they sat in the stands cheering his name, and even when he barely played, they still called him our star. At home, he was the perfect son, and no matter what happened, they found a reason to praise him. Then there was Kelly, the youngest. From the day she was born, she was the baby of the family, and that label followed her everywhere. She could break something, throw a tantrum, or even talk back, and there was always an excuse ready. She's just little, or she doesn't know any better. As she got older, the excuses changed, but the treatment stayed the same. If she wanted something, she got it. If she made a mistake, it was brushed off with a smile. For me, it was different. I was told I was too sensitive, that I overreacted, that I made things harder than they had to be. When I tried to speak up, I was accused of causing drama. If I succeeded at something, it was barely mentioned. If I struggled, it was treated like proof that I wasn't living up to expectations. One moment stands out more than most. When I got accepted into a good college, something I worked hard for, I thought maybe that would finally be the time they'd be proud of me. I remember coming into the kitchen, holding the acceptance letter with my hands shaking from excitement. I showed it to them, waiting for smiles, hugs, maybe a celebration. Instead, my dad just nodded and said, "That's going to cost a lot of money." My mom followed with, "Well, I guess we'll see if you can handle it." That was it. No party, no real recognition. Not long after, Ethan barely managed to graduate high school. His grades were poor, and he almost didn't walk at graduation. But the night he got his diploma, my parents threw a party at the house. Relatives came, there was food, decorations, and everyone toasted to him like he'd accomplished something extraordinary. I stood there watching it all, feeling invisible, wondering why my efforts never mattered the same way his did. Those kinds of moments piled up. Small, sharp reminders that I wasn't seen the same way. The message was clear. Ethan could fail and still be celebrated. Kelly could misbehave and still be protected. But I had to be perfect just to be noticed. And even then it wasn't enough. The hurt from those years never really went away. It planted itself deep inside me, growing into something I carried with me long after childhood ended. Years before that Christmas text, there was a moment that changed everything for me. It happened on Thanksgiving. Our relatives had come over. The house was full of people, and the table was set with all the traditional food. On the surface, it looked like a normal family gathering, but underneath, it turned into the night that broke whatever fragile bond one still had with. It started with something small. A relative asked me about work, and before I could even answer, my dad cut in with a joke about how I never seemed to measure up. Everyone laughed, but I didn't. My mom added her own comment, saying I should be more like Ethan, who at the time was sitting at the head of the table acting proud. Then another relative joined in, asking if I was ever going to settle down like Kelly. The room turned into a circle of jokes and comparisons, all aimed at me. I tried to laugh it off at first, but it didn't stop. Every time I opened my mouth, someone had a remark ready. It was like they had been saving them up, waiting for the perfect moment to take turns. I felt myself shrinking with every word, my face burning while they carried on like I wasn't even human sitting there. Finally, I snapped. I pushed back my chair, the sound loud enough to make everyone stop talking. I told them I was tired of being mocked in my own family, tired of always being treated like the problem. My voice was shaking, but I kept going, saying out loud what I had been holding in for years. Some relatives looked shocked, but my parents only rolled their eyes. My dad muttered that I was too dramatic, and my mom waved her hand, saying I was ruining dinner. That was it for me. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out the front door without looking back. I didn't care about the stares or the silence that followed. I couldn't sit there one more second while they tore me down and called it family. After that night, I pulled away. I didn't cut them off completely, but I kept my distance. I stopped visiting for birthdays, skipped a lot of family get-togethers, and only showed up for the big holidays. Even then, I stayed quiet, just trying to avoid more conflict. I thought maybe if I kept the peace, things would slowly improve. But nothing ever changed. My parents never once apologized for that night. They acted like it had never happened, like the things they said didn't matter. Whenever the subject came close, they brushed it aside with a joke or changed the topic. That silence became its own kind of wound. So when that Christmas message arrived years later, telling me not to come, it didn't feel random. It felt like the final piece of proof. They weren't just ignoring me anymore. They were shutting the door completely. Christmas Eve came, and instead of sitting at my parents' table surrounded by food and noise, I was alone in my apartment. The gifts I had wrapped sat neatly in a corner, piled up like a reminder of everything I had hoped for. Bright paper, shiny bows, thoughtful tags. None of it mattered now. I stared at them for a long time, wondering what I was supposed to do with presents that would never be opened. The phone sat on the coffee table in front of me, screen lighting up every so often. Most of the time, it was nothing important, just random notifications. Then, late in the evening, Kelly sent a message. It was short, almost empty of real care. She wrote, "Sorry, wish things were different." That was it. No offer to meet, no suggestion of including me anyway, no standing up for me. Just a sentence that left me feeling even smaller. I kept waiting to see if Ethan would say something. Hours went by, and the silence stretched. Nothing came from him. He had always been quiet when it came to defending me, but this time the silence cut deeper. If he cared at all, he didn't show it. I tried to distract myself, turning on the television for background noise, but every channel was filled with holiday specials, families smiling and celebrating. I couldn't take it. I muted the sound and sat in the dim light, my eyes drifting back to the phone. I thought about reaching out, about asking why they had pushed me away, but I stopped myself. What good would it do? The answer was already there, written in the message I had received days before. Tears came before I realized it. I wiped them away quickly, then more followed. I wasn't crying just for the holiday. I was crying for years of trying, years of hoping things would change, years of wanting to belong where I never truly did. Each tear felt like it carried a memory, every laugh I forced, every time I stayed quiet to keep the peace, every time I gave without receiving. Yet somewhere in the middle of that sadness, something shifted. I realized I couldn't keep letting myself be treated like this. I couldn't spend another year waiting for people who had already made it clear I didn't matter to them. The pain I felt was heavy, but behind it was something new, something sharper. The decision that this would be the last time I let them put me in this position. I stayed on the couch until late into the night, the lights from my small Christmas tree glowing softly in the... It wasn't the holiday I wanted, but it was honest. For the first time, I let myself feel the truth. I was alone, yes, but I was also done being their outsider. This was the last Christmas I would waste hoping for a seat at their table. In the days after Christmas, the hurt lingered, but it slowly began to change into something else. I kept thinking about how much effort I had always given, how often I had been there for my family, even when they weren't there for me. For years, I remembered birthdays and sent thoughtful gifts, even when money was tight. I drove over to help my parents with errands when they called last minute. I covered for Ethan when he needed a favor, and I watched Kelly's pets when she went out of town. No matter how I was treated, I still showed up, still gave pieces of myself, still carried responsibilities no one else wanted. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They had come to expect my loyalty without ever offering theirs in return. I had been the one putting in effort, and they had been the ones taking it for granted. It wasn't just about Christmas. It was about every time they assumed I would bend without hesitation. They wanted my presence when it was convenient, but when it came to respect or care, I was left with scraps. That realization hit me hard. I felt the weight of all the years I had poured into them, but I also felt something freeing. If they had made the choice to shut me out, then I could make my own choice too. I didn't need to yell at them or demand answers. I didn't need to fight with them at all. The best way forward wasn't through anger. It was through stepping back, through taking away the very things they had grown used to relying on from me. I told myself, if they don't want me there, fine. But I won't play the scapegoat anymore. That thought settled into me like a promise. This time, I wouldn't chase after their approval. This time, I wouldn't rush to make their lives easier while mine was left empty. The small acts of kindness they barely noticed, the support they counted on without gratitude, those were mine to give, and I was done giving them away to people who saw me as less. It wasn't an easy shift. Part of me still wanted to cling to hope, to believe that one day they would realize what they had done. But another part of me knew better. Waiting for them to change was wasting my own life. My revenge wasn't going to be about shouting or slamming doors. It was going to be quieter, deeper. I would remove their access to me, my time, my care, my willingness to always be there. Sitting with that decision, I felt stronger than I had in years. They had pushed me out, but now I would make sure they understood what it really meant to live without me. For the first time, the power was in my hands, and I wasn't planning on letting it go. After the holidays passed, I carried a lot of heavy feelings around with me. I wanted to get them out somehow, but I knew confronting my family directly would only end with them dismissing me again. So I started writing. Page after page, I poured everything into letters I never intended to send. In them, I wrote about every betrayal I could remember, every time I had been pushed aside, every moment that proved I was treated differently. I wrote about the favoritism, the way Ethan was praised no matter what, the way Kelly was sheltered, and the way I was singled out. I wrote about that Christmas text, the one that cut deeper than all the rest. The letters weren't for them. They were for me. Seeing the words on paper made it real, and it reminded me that I wasn't imagining things. The pain I felt wasn't a story I had made up in my head. It had happened, and I had lived through it. When the letters were done, I folded them up and tucked them away. I didn't need to send them. I already knew how they would respond, with excuses, with silence, with blame. That was fine. This time, I wasn't writing to get their approval. I was writing to free myself. Along with writing, I started pulling back from everything I used to give. I stopped buying gifts. I stopped making phone calls. I stopped checking in on birthdays or running errands when they didn't want to bother anyone else. The things I had done for years out of habit, I simply let go of. It felt strange at first, like I was breaking a pattern I had carried for my whole life. But with each step, I felt lighter. With the space that opened up, I began focusing on the people who actually cared about me. I spent more time with friends who made me feel seen, who appreciated me without conditions. I grew closer to coworkers who treated me with respect. Most importantly, I leaned on my partner. She had been by my side through it all, reminding me I was worth more than the scraps of attention I used to settle for. With her, I felt steady, cared for, and understood. At first, my family didn't notice. They went on with their lives, probably assuming I would eventually fall back into my old. They didn't reach out, and I didn't reach in. For once, I didn't feel guilty about it. As weeks turned into months, something unexpected happened. I started to feel a kind of peace I hadn't known before. The constant knot in my chest began to loosen. Without the pressure of trying to please people who would never be satisfied, I could finally breathe. My life began to fill with real connections, with people who wanted me around, not out of obligation, but out of love. And that was something my family had never been able to give. Months passed, and life carried on, but not in the way it used to. I had built new routines for myself, spent time with people who cared about me, and I felt more at peace than I ever had before. It wasn't until small events began to stack up that my family started to notice the difference. The first test came when Ethan was moving into a new house. Normally, I would have been the first to show up. I had always been the sibling who carried boxes, set up furniture, and stayed until everything was finished. This time I didn't. He sent a quick message asking if I could help, and I simply told him I wouldn't be available. I didn't explain, I didn't apologize, I just said no. He didn't respond, but I knew he was surprised. For the first time, I wasn't the backup plan he could depend on. Not long after, Kelly had her baby shower. She sent an invitation, and I looked at it for a while before deciding I wouldn't go. I thought about all the times she had stayed silent when I needed her to speak up, about the half-hearted text she had sent on Christmas Eve, and I realized I couldn't sit there smiling, pretending nothing had happened. I declined the invite without excuses. She didn't reply, and the silence that followed spoke louder than any words she could have written. It was after these moments that my parents stepped in. They called me one evening, their tone sharp, their words heavy with disappointment. My mom said, "Family comes first, Robin. You're letting everyone down." My dad added, "You can't just turn your back like this. These are your brother and sister." For a moment, I almost felt the old guilt creeping in, the urge to defend myself or explain. But then I remembered that message from Christmas, the one that told me everything I needed to know. I took a deep breath and kept my voice calm. "You made it clear where I stand 3 days before Christmas," I said. "I'm just respecting the choice you made." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear them breathing, could imagine the looks on their faces, but no words came. For once, they didn't have a quick response or a dismissal ready. They were forced to sit with it, forced to realize that their actions had consequences. I ended the call before they could recover and twist the blame back on. My hands were steady, my chest felt lighter, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was the one in the wrong. They had pushed me away, and now they were finally starting to feel what it meant. The balance had shifted, and I wasn't going back. The truth about that Christmas didn't come out until months later. I was visiting a relative, someone who had always been kinder to me than most of my family. We were talking casually when they lowered their voice and said something I wasn't prepared for. They told me the real reason my parents had decided I shouldn't come to Christmas. It wasn't because of anything I had done that year. It wasn't because of some sudden problem between us. It was because Ethan's wife, Lauren, didn't want me there. I sat frozen as the words sank in. Lauren had never liked me much, that was true. She was polite on the surface, but there had always been an edge to the way she spoke to me, like I was someone she had to tolerate rather than accept. Still, I never thought my parents would go as far as to choose her comfort over their own child. But they had. They decided it was easier to cut me out than to stand up for me. Hearing it laid out so clearly felt like being hit in the chest. For so long, I had believed the story that I was too sensitive, that I was the one making everything harder, that I was the problem in the family. But now I saw it for what it really was. It wasn't about me being difficult. It was about convenience. They didn't want conflict with Ethan's wife. so they sacrificed me instead. The betrayal burned deeper than I could explain. I thought about all the times I had blamed myself, all the times I had cried wondering what was wrong with me. And yet, here was the proof. It wasn't about my worth, it was about their choices. They found it easier to let me take the fall than to have one uncomfortable conversation with someone outside the family. That realization shifted something inside me. It was painful, yes, but also clarifying. For years, I had been stuck in the idea that if I just tried harder, if I just proved myself enough, then maybe they would see me differently. But no amount of effort could have changed what they did. Their loyalty wasn't with me, their own child. It was with someone who married into the family. I left that visit feeling both heavier and lighter. Heavier because the betrayal cut deeper than any wound before, but lighter because I finally understood the truth. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't imagining things, and I wasn't the villain they had painted me to be. I had been pushed aside for someone else's comfort, and once I saw it clearly, there was no going back. That truth closed a door for me. I stopped wondering if I could ever earn my place in their lives. They had shown me where I stood, and now I was ready to stand somewhere else, on my own terms, without them. The next time my family gathered, I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue with them anymore, and I wasn't going to give them the chance to twist things around like they always did. I wasn't showing up to fight. I was showing up to end it on my terms. For years, I had been the one who held on to old family items, photo albums, heirlooms, little things passed down that nobody else bothered to keep safe. They had trusted me with them because they knew I was responsible, because they knew I cared. But after everything that had happened, I realized those things didn't belong with me anymore. If they wanted to erase me from their circle, then they could also live with the weight of their own history. So, I packed everything into boxes and loaded them into my car. When I arrived at the gathering, I didn't knock. I walked right in, carrying the first box. The room went quiet. Eyes turned toward me, surprised to see me standing there after so much silence between us. My parents looked uncomfortable, Ethan frowned, and Kelly shifted uneasily in her chair. I didn't let the tension stop me. I set the box down in the middle of the room. One by one, I brought the rest inside. Photo albums full of birthdays, weddings, and holidays. Jewelry passed down from grandparents. Old letters, childhood drawings, and even the dusty decorations that had been stored in my closet for years. When the last box hit the floor, I finally spoke. My voice was steady, calm, not angry, just final. "You didn't want me at Christmas," I said, "so you don't get me any other time. Here's your stuff. Don't expect anything else." The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever felt in that house. No one spoke. No one tried to stop me. For once, there were no excuses, no guilt trips, no attempts to shift the blame. They just sat there, forced to take in what I had said. I didn't wait for a reply. I turned, walked out the door, and closed it behind me. The sound of it shutting was like closing a chapter one had carried for too long. Driving away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was sadness, yes, but it wasn't the same crushing sadness I had carried for years. This time, it was clean. It was the kind of sadness that comes with release. I had finally given back everything that tied me to them. In the weeks that followed, my life began to settle into something new. I poured my time into friends who treated me like family, into coworkers who respected me, into Maya, who never let me forget that I was enough. My world was smaller, maybe, but it was real. The revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was in leaving them behind, in letting them sit with the silence they had created. And for the first time, I felt free.